Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and talk about Zoom. Now, Zoom is a teleconferencing application, and this is going to be one of those great technological tools that allows us to really connect not just with students, but also parents and each other as colleagues. So, let's go through how to get this set up. Now, there are a couple things we want to talk about. The first thing we want to talk about is that we want to make sure we're using best practices. And while everything is kind of in flux and shifting, we need to be keeping an eye on our email for any changes in regulations or best practice, just in case, because we always want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, but also protecting students. So let's go ahead and take a look at a slideshow put together by Ms. Gail Dunham, and let's talk about how we might be able to get Zoom set up to work for us. Let's go. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Google and we're going to type Zoom. Zoom should be the first thing right at the top of all of your search results. And you should have right here at the top sign in, sign up, it's free. Okay, so now that we've gotten that taken care of, let's take a look at how we might use this more effectively. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to show you the slideshow over to the right or to the left, excuse me, to ensure that you know exactly where we're at in our process. So we're going to be going through all the things in this table of contents. And so as you can see here, the first thing is sign up. It's free. So what we want to do is we want to put in a address. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use this school address, and I want to sign up. Now, they've sent me an email to this address so that I can confirm exactly how to set this up with my computer. So I'm going to go to that account. And I'm going to go down to my email. And I should, there it is, see that email that allows me to activate. And that activation screen is exactly this guy right here. So we're going to look for that in this email. Looks like all I have to do is hit activate. Now, the next thing I have to do is I'm going to have to answer a few questions. So to complete my Zoom sign up, I need to create a first name and a last name and a password. Now, you will have to make this password your own. Now, you may very well want to use your school password because I highly recommend you use your school email to do this. There are some features during the situation that Zoom has made available that they don't normally make available. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and see if we can continue and confirm that password. All right. Now, it also says invite your colleagues. I'm going to be honest, I'm inviting you right now, so feel free to sign up at your own leisure. Okay, so once you've put in your school email, determined your password, and gotten a Zoom account, now you simply need to follow the directions and go to My Account. This will open up a screen that has lots and lots of settings. But here's the good news. The good news is you don't have to use these settings all the time. You just have to set these for your primary preferences, and then every time you go in, they will say stay set up. Now, at this point, we want to go through and make sure we have all the settings. So maybe we can change our picture. If we change our picture, we can upload a picture from our files, or we could go ahead and have the computer take our picture. But in our case, let's just leave it where it is. Now, we need to verify our time zone. In this case, it correctly found that I have the Central Time Zone, so I don't need to worry about that. And I definitely want to connect to contact services with my calendar. This allows Zoom to put those things right into your calendar. Everything you set up goes right into your calendar and it syncs with it. So, by going through that process and just linking it to the appropriate account, it will link all of your Zoom pieces right to your calendar and account. So, moving on down, we see what do we need to do next? Well, we need to go to settings. Settings right over here. And number two, we need to toggle on and off different components as we have determined for best practices. So, first things first, start meetings with the host video on? No, let's leave that off. We also want to make sure in this particular case that participants' videos that we do not have them on when we start the meeting. We also don't want to give our students the ability to turn this on. Now, this is a great capability, but since we're working with minors and we are working with them in locations that we can't control, we don't want to inadvertently tape something, see something, or allow students to show something that might be inappropriate. So this boils down to protecting ourselves and protecting the students. So let's go ahead and keep scrolling for some more settings. Once we get down to this level, we want to say personal meeting ID. Nope, do not use that because we don't want anybody impersonating us. We want it to automatically generate unique meeting ideas for everybody, but we definitely want to require a password. This second level of authentication will help prevent those people from Zoom bombing into your meetings with students. So it's a second level of protection for both you and the students. We do want to require a password for instant meetings, and we want to require passwords for all meetings using PMI. We have the embedded password with one click. So once a student has the link that we've emailed directly to them, all they have to do is click and it won't need to worry about the password. We are going to have the password set for joining by phone again as a security measure. So once we come down to the end of this page, let's look and see what's on the next one. We want to make sure that we mute all participants upon entry, which means they have to physically turn on their microphone each time because we in general want all microphones off, because if the speakers are on, you can get a feedback loop coming through speakers into the microphone, and we want that avoided. Also, we don't want inadvertent conversations picked up. So again, protections for students and teachers. Go ahead and set that reminder to on. We don't necessarily need to require encryption, but we do want to prevent all participants from saving chat. We, as the host, can save it. We can control that, but we don't want students saving things because if somebody puts something inappropriate in, we want to be able to address that in accordance with the standard handbook rules that we always have. So we want to make sure we hit save, and this keeps that setting permanently. All right. So now private chat, we definitely want off because we want everybody in the same chat at this point. We also want auto saving of chats to be off. Moving on down, let's go and take a look at upcoming meeting reminders. We've already got those. Private chats are off. So let's come down to play sound. Play sound when leaving or joining, you betcha, but we only want it heard by the host. We don't want this distracting everybody else, and we can record and play their own voice. Off, 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 and down here, allow, show meeting control toolbar, and allow host to put attendees on hold. This allows you, if a student is doing something that you don't wish, you simply put them basically in timeout, and so you can address it at that point. Automatically save chats, not this time. And play sound, so let's move on down. We come down and we have screen sharing. Only the host should be able to screen share. That means I, as the teacher, can control what goes up on the screen, just like a classroom. Now, I can adapt these things as I get better at Zoom. But for now, this is where we want to say. And who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? Host only is by default, since we're the only ones that can chat and we can share scenes. In this case, let's disable desktop screen share for the users so that we don't have, again, things interrupting. Now, we've come down to annotation. We want to turn annotation off. That means students won't be able to write on top of whatever I put on the screen. They won't be able to put other messages or pictures on there. We also want to not allow them to put messages on the whiteboard. We as teachers will still be able to use whiteboard, but they won't. So here we go. I know this is a lot of screens, but once these things are set up, they're going to be your defaults every time. So we just have to go through it once. Now, if we have remote control, we do not want to share it with anyone unless you're co-teaching. This is an advanced feature that you may end up using down the road, but for now, turn that off. We also move right on down, no breakout rooms. We want everybody together. We do not want to allow remote support in this case or closed captioning, and we don't want to save the captions at the end. So the next thing that's going to be turned on is the virtual background. Now, you'll notice that behind me, I have a green screen. This allows me to put back here whatever image I want to put, but I don't have to have this. The nice thing about Zoom is students can put something in their image behind themselves even without this fanciness. It uses a strange filter similar to Instagram. But for now, we want to go ahead and give students that opportunity and that choice. So virtual background is on, identity of guest participants webinar off, 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 and we're finally moving right on down. The next ones that are on is allow users to select stereo audio if they choose, allow them to select audio clients, and this is a big one right here, waiting rooms. Waiting rooms mean that those students that you sent invitations out to, they enter first into a waiting room, and you're aware that they have come into the waiting room, and then you are allowed to admit each of those people into the chat one at a time. So if a student is using, for example, a username that is inappropriate, we can hold them in the waiting room without letting them into the chat. Or if we see somebody that we do not recognize on our class roster is trying to join, we leave them in the waiting room and do not allow them into the chat. So the waiting room is a big key that has been added for our protection. So make sure you're using that waiting room. It's very easy to use, and we'll show you how. Now, at this point, show a join from your browser link. Absolutely. And now we are really getting into it. As we move on down, we come down to blur snapshot for iOS. No, we're not going to worry about that. English schedule privilege, and we are finally done. In this case, we assign scheduling privilege to, in our case, nobody. It's just us. Now, again, this might be a feature we might use in the future, but for this point, not capable for what we want to do right now. Okay, we have finally come to the end of all the settings, but remember, that needs to be done once. So with that in mind, let's go on ahead and let's go to host a meeting. And we want to host a meeting with video on. If you want to schedule a meeting for the future, let's go ahead and click schedule a meeting. And in our case, I'm going to label this my test meeting. I can put the description, pre-calculus, and I can find a time. So later today at 4 p.m., that'd be fine, or I could set it any other time. Your basic 40-minute subscription, time limit of 3 or more participants. Upgrade now to enjoy. Now, there are, as you'll notice here at the top, a lot of those temporary restrictions have been removed from Zoom due to this current situation. Double check your standard time, and we're almost ready to go here. Once you have everything set that you want and that you have your meeting password set, You can ensure any other final settings are set correctly. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to enable join before host. That means the students can't get in before we get there because we want to make sure that we're monitoring this the whole time it's going. Additionally, mute participants upon entry. We've already set that, and enable that waiting room. We are not recording meetings automatically. So we hit save. Now you'll notice I shared earlier to my calendar. All I have to do is hit Google Calendar and it will put it over there in my Google Calendar. So it works out really, really nicely. We add that to the calendar. And finally, if you wish to, you can copy this URL right here by hitting copy invitation. And if I copy the meeting invitation, I can take that and I can go to Skyward or anywhere else I need to go and email all of that information out to students. So that is getting signed up for Zoom. That is getting all of the presettings set. That is getting ready to schedule a meeting or to start a meeting. And with that in mind, we'll go ahead on into Zoom and pick up a couple more pieces of information there. But the last thing I want to share with you is we have a great set of classroom expectations. This is the first thing I would share immediately upon opening your Zoom so that each student or participant knows exactly what is expected of them once you begin the meeting. But you'll see this later. With that, we're going to go on ahead and end this session. And in the next section, we'll talk about actually how to host the meeting.